Good evening, everybody, and welcome to this meeting of the Maidenhead Development Management Committee on the 20th of September 2023. My name is Councillor Joshua Reynolds and I will be chairing this meeting. This meeting is being held in person and on Zoom and being streamed live to the public on YouTube. I remind all attendees that the participation in the meeting is consent to the audio and video being live streamed and acknowledgement that it will continue to be in the public domain after the meeting. Firstly, I think it would be helpful if all members and officers can introduce themselves. So I'll start with myself. I'm Councillor Joshua Reynolds and I'm the chair of the Maidenhead Development Management Committee. Gillian.
Hello, I'm Gillian McInnes. I'm Interim Deputy Head of Planning.
I'm Alison Long, the North Area Team Leader.
Hello, I'm Sarah Tucker.
And I'm joining from Zoom and I'm the case officer for item number 2.
Dear, it is working. Councillor Hill, a voting member of the panel.
Hunt, voting member of the panel.
Councillor Leo Waters, a member of the panel and representing Bray.
Councillor Gary Reeves and voting member of the Planning Committee representing the ward of Cox Green.
Representing Riverside Ward, voting panel member.
I'm a voting member of the panel, represent the Bisham and Cookham Ward.
Martin, voting member of the panel, representing Belmont.
Democratic Service Officer Will Ward, and I'll be clerking the meeting.
Thank you, everybody. I request that meeting participants don't speak unless specifically invited to, and you can indicate your desire to speak by raising your hand on the system in front of you or raising your hand on Zoom if you're joining remotely. I'll monitor these requests and come to them in the order that I receive. So we will jump to item 1 on the agenda, apologies for absence. Will, have we had any apologies?
Yes, we've got one apology, Councillor Taylor, and no substitute.
Fantastic, thank you, Will. And we've got item number 2, declarations of interest. Any declarations of interest from any panel members today? Councillor Brough.
Item number 2, there's a concern of the extra traffic the application will create, especially the HGV. And I had a word with legal, and I'm okay to sit on the panel and vote for it. So I have come with an open mind.
Fantastic,
Yeah.
thank you, Councillor Brough. Councillor Hunt.
Yeah, thank you. Application 2203-270. I believe I was told on Friday, I think it was, that Anglesey have, or British Airways pension scheme. Well, Anglesey is one of their people, and I have a British Airways pension. I had no knowledge, and this certainly wouldn't affect me in any way.
Thank you, Councillor Brough, and Councillor Hill.
Thank you, Chairman. Just item number 5, which is Maidenhead Office Park and Westercott Way. I did meet with the developer on site and have a tour of the site, but I come with an open mind this evening. Thank you, Chairman.
Thank you, Councillor Hill. Minutes of the previous meeting, item 3. Are the panel happy for me to approve the minutes? Agreed. Thank you very much. So we are going to change the order for the agenda this evening, just for the volume of people we've got in the room concerning item 5, Maidenhead Office Park. So we will start on that one. Sarah, would you like to take us through the application to start off with?
Thank you. Can someone put me on screen so I can share my...
The Democratic Services are starting that one now for you, Sarah.
Thank you.
Sarah, you should be able to share your screen now.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
Can you see that? Can you see my screen?
Not at the moment, Sarah. Give us 2 seconds while Dem Services are just taking a look.
Is it me or is it your end?
The settings are correct, Sarah, from Democratic Services end. If you would like to send it over, or Alison can share it from her end if that's easier. Fantastic. Alison's bringing it up on screen now, so hopefully we should be able to see that through for everybody.
Thank you. Can you hear me okay?
We can indeed.
Okay, thank you. Thank you, Chair, and apologies for not being in the council chamber today, but I have COVID and I wouldn't want anyone else to get it. The application before you seeks outline plan permission for the demolition of the existing office park buildings and redevelopment for industrial and logistic uses within use classes E, G, 3, B2 and B8. All matters are reserved except for the principle of the maximum floor space proposed and the access. The site consists of an existing office park, as you can see on the location map here, constructed in the early 1990s and in use since then. The site is accessed off Westercott Way, which is currently under the blue line, which links up to the A4. To the north of the site lies the railway line, residential properties on Cherry Garden Lane. To the south of the site lies Whitewater Airfield and the edge of Maidenhead itself. To the east lies another commercial enterprise, which is also accessed off Westercott Way, and to the west lie agricultural fields. The site is surrounded by a substantial stand of Lilandi trees. The site lies wholly within the Greenbelt. It is allocated under policy ED2 of the Borough Local Plan as an established employment site in the Greenbelt for use class EG uses and industrial uses. The site is also subject to a TPO, which includes trees on the boundaries of the site and trees within the amenity area. It does not include the Lilandi trees, which are under the control of the airfield. There are 2 public rights of way that cross Westercott Way, the access drive. The application has been submitted with a parameter plan. Can you show that, Alison, for me? Thank you. Which sets out the broad area for redevelopment in purple. This does not include the majority of the existing amenity area, which includes ponds and trees, and leaves a gap for future planting on the southern side of the site. The application has been amended to retain the amenity area, and in response to concerns of the Airfield Advisory Team, who are part of the CAA. The proposed uses include B8 logistic uses, and these are outside the uses set out in policy ED2 of the BLP. Furthermore, it will result in a nil net loss of office space, as no office space is proposed as part of the proposal. The applicants therefore submitted a needs assessment, which officers have sought independent evaluation of. And if you, in paragraph 10.8 of the report, I've got a knot where there should be I've got too many knots in the second sentence, so there will be a nil net loss of office space. The independent evaluation shows that there's been a sharp shift away from office working to working at home, and this is a long-term trend. The office market is weaker than expected when the BLP was drafted. Furthermore, the industrial and logistics market have both strengthened recently, especially with regard to logistics. With regard to logistics, there's only one site allocated in the BLP it's called the Triangle site. Essentially, the current application seeks to move from a land use that is less in demand, which is offices, to one that is stronger in demand, industrial and logistics. The loss of office space would not cause a significant concern in the borough, as the land is being recycled into a new economic use. And there's also proposals for office use within Maidenhead Town Centre. The MPPF is clear that it requires planning decisions to address specific location requirements of different industrial sectors, and significant weight should be placed on the need to support economic growth and productivity. Given this MPPF requirement for flexibility, whilst the proposal does not completely accord with policy ED2 of the BLP, it does recycle existing employment land into a new economic use and goes some way to meeting the employment needs of the borough. The scale of the development means that it is inappropriate development in the Greenbelt. I have not shied away in the report from stating this will be a big increase in floor space and volume on the proposed compared to the existing buildings, and this will result in harm by way of inappropriateness and harm to openness. Very special circumstances will therefore be required to outweigh this harm by reason of inappropriateness and any other harm. There are a number of public benefits to the scheme, including a social value action plan to provide local employment, which can be secured as part of a 106 agreement, and bringing an underperforming employment use back into economic use. The application is also supported by an economic viability assessment, which has been independently assessed. The conclusions were that the current proposal is viable, but smaller schemes are not. These are the positive economic benefits of the scheme and are considered to constitute very special circumstances in Greenbelt policy terms. These public benefits are considered to be very special circumstances that outweigh the harm to the Greenbelt by way of inappropriateness and any other harm. The highway officer has considered the highway impacts of the scheme are acceptable, and a travel plan is proposed by way of a section 106 agreement, and you will see on the update sheet that there is more detailed considerations on highways. With regard to the concerns regarding the amount of HGV traffic, because as a result of the proposal, there will be an increase on HGV traffic. The two main roundabout junctions would operate within capacity. HGVs will not travel through Birchett's Green, which is already subject to speed restrictions. All vehicles would naturally use the direct and quicker route to the A4 Bath Road to reach the A404M. And figures show within the TA, which has been assessed by the highway officers, that there is sufficient capacity to accommodate the amount of HGVs on the A4. The retention of the amenity space on site allows for retention of biodiversity here. However, the required 10% biodiversity net gain cannot be achieved on site. And therefore the applicant has secured land for habitat creation within 5 kilometres of the site, but within the borough. This approach to biodiversity net gain is considered acceptable and will be secured by a section 106 agreement. Concerns regarding the effects on the adjacent airfield have been fully assessed by the airfield advisory team of the CAA, who have made some recommendations, which I have included in the recommended conditions. Whilst accepting that there are concerns from local residents regarding the scheme, the nearest of these are 59 metres from the site, and the area has a substantial amount of pre-existing background noise levels with the railway line and the airfield itself. The Environmental Protection Officer is satisfied with the noise and air quality reports, subject to the recommended conditions. All other issues are adequately dealt with by way of suitable conditions, and given this, officers consider that the application is recommended for approval, subject to the section 106 agreement and the conditions. Thank you very much, Chair.
Thank you, Sarah. There are 4 registered speakers for this application, and we will take them through objectors, then the parish council, the applicant, and then other borough councillors. So first of all, we have the objectors, and that is Flip Pyle. Are you in the room today? Fantastic. You have 3 minutes. Please press the button on the microphone. It will go red when you are able to start, and the clerk will give you a warning when you have 1 minute remaining. The silver button on the right-hand side under the screen. If you press that button for me, and it should go green.
The application on behalf of the Littlewick Green Society, Woolly Hall and Fines Park. I represent 300 properties, and I note there are not shown on the maps provided as part of the planning submission. Given the limited time, I'd like to address 3 main issues: the volume of HGV traffic, environmental issues, and warehouse demand, starting with a massive increase in HGV traffic along Westcott Way and the A4. Council policy states that any greenbelt development should not have a detrimental impact on residential amenity. The transport assessment notes over 800 two-way HGV movements over a 12-hour daily period. This is a 15-fold increase on current levels and would equate to over 1 HGV passing our homes at up to 50 miles per hour every minute of the day. Some of our homes are less than 100 metres from Westcott Way. Furthermore, at least 200 tonnes of CO2 will be emitted from the HGVs whilst travelling along Westcott Way. The plans are in conflict with the borough's environmental and climate strategy to deliver net zero carbon emissions by 2050. The stated volume of HGV poses a real and significant danger to pedestrians, many of whom are young children, families, and amateur road racing cyclists. The associated noise, vehicle vibration, and pollution will have a serious and detrimental impact on our physical and mental health and quality of life. Turning to the environmental issues, the proposals within a greenbelt area under the borough local plan, the harm from the proposal is not outweighed to warrant very special circumstances, and there will be a very negative impact on wildlife and biodiversity of the area. The applicant has proposed a massive intensification of the greenbelt. The floor space proposed is 103% greater than existing, and more significantly, the volume is an enormous 300% greater. We strongly disagree with the officer's conclusion that the social and economic benefits outweigh the impact on the greenbelt, particularly as the council has recently allocated a very large site at Braywick Triangle for warehousing. There is a far better access to the motorway network, and it is less than a mile away from the proposed site, and it would not affect residents, biodiversity or wildlife. Regarding warehouse demand, an independent assessment undertaken by planning consultants Nathaniel Litchfield for this council identified a high net need for office floor space and a low requirement for warehousing. If that is the case, the proposals put forward by Anglesey Capital totally contradict council policies and would destroy high quality offices. Lastly, I want to turn to procedural matters. The local residents directly impacted by the proposals have not been properly considered or consulted. The documentation available contains errors, omissions, and redactions. On behalf of those I'm representing, I urge you to refuse this application.
Thank you, Mr. Poe. The next speaker that we have is from the Parish Council and is Mr. Paul Martin. Mr. Martin, you have 3 minutes to speak from the moment your light goes red. If you press the button on the right-hand side of the microphone, you should be able to start. Thank you.
Councillors, I represent the electors of White Waltham Parish Council. The proposed development is in White Waltham Parish. There have been over 250 individual objections from individuals living in the parish and nearby this development. There are also objections from the neighbouring Hurley Parish Council, from the Littlewick Green and Birchett's Green Village Associations, and the Fiends Park Resident Association, as we've heard. Between them, those associations represent over 500 households affected by and objecting to this development. As we've heard, the proposal is not just a small increase in footprint in the Greenbelt. It represents the construction of 100% increased footprint and 300% increase volume. The applicant therefore needs to demonstrate very special circumstances, as we heard from the planning officer. They say that the creation of jobs represents those very special circumstances. However, even if the jobs that are promised are created over the 10-year period, they say that only 40% of them will be for local people, i.e. residents of the Royal Borough. But there is no guarantee that those jobs will be delivered. Nobody is held accountable at the end of the day, and we get left with the huge warehouses that have already been built. The planning officer seeks permission to approve the application subject to an undertaking to create those jobs. We believe, therefore, that the very special circumstances have not been demonstrated on the basis that there's nothing to prove that those jobs actually will happen. Meanwhile, the applicant says the development will create an additional 750 HGV movements on the A4 per day. That equates to 1 per minute at peak hours. Aside from the volume of traffic, the traffic assessment that's been carried out has not covered the impact of those HGVs specifically on the users of the A4 and on local residents. The HGV traffic will seriously affect the ability of residents to turn out of side roads such as Cherry Garden Lane, Birchett's Green Lane, the Holloway and the Shire Horse Pub. It will also cause a serious safety issue to the very many pedestrians and horses that cross the A4 from Cherry Garden Lane to the thicket all day, every day. The A4 is frequently used by cyclists. We know that HGVs and cyclists, as well as HGVs and pedestrians and horses, do not mix well. The environmental assessment has only covered operations on the site. It has not covered the impact of pollution on the A4. We request that this application is refused on the basis of the safety, pollution, and access issues that its traffic will create on the A4, together with the lack of certainty of jobs being provided to counter the impact on the Greenbelt. This is not the right location for a logistics hub. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Martin. The next speaker we have is on behalf of the applicant, and that is Mark Harris. Mr. Harris, you've got 3 minutes from the minute your microphone goes red, and the clerk will give you a warning when you have 1 minute remaining.
Good evening, Chair. I'm Mark Harris, the applicant's town planning consultant. The office park is a previously developed site with excellent existing connections to the A4 and wider strategic road network. Its development and industrial use first originated during the First World War before it was developed in the 90s as an office park. The park is experiencing high levels of prolonged vacancy due to structural changes in the office market and an oversupply of offices. It's been marketed extensively without success for 8 years and has a vacancy rate of around 80%. A site that can support around 1,000 jobs is only providing around 200. It's clearly underutilised and offers a significant opportunity for growth. The site owners have proactively responded to the clear market signals, including an unmet need for industrial logistics floor space in the Royal Borough. This site can meet this need due to its excellent connections and availability. This high quality scheme offers transformative change for the local area and Royal Borough. It will fully utilise this largely wasted economic and social resource, encouraging inward investment, innovation and job creation. The significant and wide-ranging public benefits include approximately 896 new jobs, an enhancement of the area's industrial logistics capacity with a wide range of building sizes for new and existing businesses. Via the applicant's own social value commitments and the employment and skills plan, there will be targeted local job creation, training, investment and innovation. This will include working with schools, colleges and stakeholders, also offering spin-offs for local supply chains and community projects. This is closely aligned with the Royal Borough's corporate objectives to have more local people in employment, improve skills, opportunities, and reduce inequality. It will replace dated, inefficient buildings with a highly sustainable development that is BREEAM excellent and targets net zero during operation, exceeding your policy requirements. It provides a minimum 10% biodiversity net gain via a landscape-led scheme strategy, exceeding your requirements. These are significant economic, social and environmental benefits that form the very special circumstances required. The applicant has listened very carefully to the local community during public consultation and the application process. This has led to retention of the existing amenity area, reduced overall height, developable area and floor space, a restricted height zone and further safety measures to respect the airfield, and the social value assessment to target critical areas of economic and social need. Your officer's report clearly explains this and how the application is acceptable. This is an outline application, so some of the detailed objections can only be addressed at the detailed stage. Should approval be given, we look forward to continuing to work with you, the local community, neighbours and stakeholders on the detailed scheme before reserved matters applications are made. Thank you for listening, and I respectfully request that planning permission is granted in line with the officer's recommendation.
Thank you, Mr. Harris. We have one other registered speaker on this item, which is one of the ward councillors for the Hurley and Walthams, Councillor Blundell. Councillor Blundell, you have 3 minutes. The clerk will give you a warning when you have 1 minute remaining. Thank you.
So I'd first like to introduce myself to the residents of the public gallery. I'm Councillor Blundell, and I've personally been a resident of Litterwick Green my entire life, with this planning application being very close to home and with the issues therefore being very obvious to me. The issue that has most worried the residents regards the various issues surrounding traffic. The fact is that the proposed development would lead to at least 750 HGV movements back and forth from the proposed logistics hub. This immediately strikes me as excessive, with this increase of heavy goods vehicles dramatically changing the highway traffic for locals, with increased congestion further increasing safety hazards for residents located in the Holloway, Cherry Garden Lane and on the Bath Road, as well as all the residents located around Litterwick Green and Hurley and Walthams Ward. Whilst the highway officer's model shows that the increase in traffic is within the capacity of the Westcott Way roundabout, it however does not take into account the possibility of increased tailbacks on the roundabout and the side roads, which cause further safety hazards to pedestrians, cyclists and horse riders, who commonly use the A4 and other side roads. I've personally seen firsthand the dangers posed by vehicles on the A4, as I witnessed the death of a horse only as a small child on the A4. The transport assessment does not take into account or consider that HGVs do not stop as quickly as private cars, which will therefore increase the chance of a similar accident occurring again if this application is permitted. Saying on the subject of the transport assessment, it states that there will be no HGV movements along the A4 going west towards Reading. This statement is a fallacy, as it is something that would not be policed. If there were any issues on the A404 thicket roundabout, traffic would only go in that direction, passing through rural villages and potentially even villages such as Birch's Green, which are again heavily populated by pedestrians, cyclists and horse riders. Connected with the issue of increased traffic is also the concern of the increase in pollution in the area, with the applicant only including the office park site in its pollution assessment scope.
1 minute.
With increased pollution in the Greenbelt being very negative to local residents, many of who move to the area to avoid heavy pollution. Overall, the redevelopment of Maidenhead Business Park in this manner would most definitely affect the residents locally in many negative ways, with the outcry of residents, parish councils and the White Waltham Airfield clearly showing that this increase in industrialisation should not be approved. And I hope that that will be the decision made by the planning committee tonight. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Blundell. That is the end of public speakers. So now I open up to panel members. Panel, who would like to start us off on this item? Councillor Hunt, please.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I'd like to thank our officer for all the work that she's done. and acknowledge the applicants because they offered to show us around the site, which was very helpful. There's quite a few things on this application that really need to be looked at. I know this area very well. I've been up and down Westercott Way so many times you wouldn't believe, over to Briggs, etc., etc. So I'm very aware of what went on in the past, when it was full, when Nortel was there, all the rest of it, and what goes on at the present, and what is proposed. I'll start with the airfield, because that's hugely important to everybody in the borough, Maidenhead, but certainly more so for White Waltham and Hurley, Little Wick Green, all our area, really important. Now, I did contact our officer about the base on the ground level and the building to go from there rather than the spoils being left in situ. So I'm pleased about that will be looked at, the base levels. That was condition 11. Condition 12, glint and glare. Now, what is proposed is 12,000, somewhere, because it's such a lot to remember, 12,000 PV solar panels on the roofs of these buildings. And there is a cause of glint and glare. The applicants did look at this and produced a report. The AAT and ASA also did a report. Now, what we have to look at is not a field of these solar panels, which is shown on other airfields, small airfields, large airfields. These are high. These are 16 meters high. And that is a problem. And the AAT and ASA say there is a potential for glint and glare to impact all runways and their associated circuit tracks. So that's the 12,000 square meters. So in theory, glint and glare from these solar panels may potentially, this is their own consultant's report, may potentially be a safety issue for pilots, particularly where this creates a temporary after image. So it's all unknown, Mr. Chairman. You know, nobody knows what's going to come of this. There is just one thing, a special anti-reflective coating that could possibly put on if members of the panel do accept officer's recommendation. I would like that in one of the conditions because it is so, so important. Otherwise, we lose our airfield, quite frankly. Then we go to Greenblow, the very special circumstances. So we've got 33-acre site. You have a building volume at the moment, the existing is 148, well, say 149 cubic meters volume. What is proposed from 149,000 cubic meters, 641 or 642 cubic meters volume. That shows the intensity of what is proposed here. It's not just the height of, 60 meters high, the highest, and some a bit lower, but the whole volume. The intensity is huge. With that volume, it becomes, it's gone out. The buildings are knocked down, we've got more. There is an appeal hearing coming up next month for a previously developed land in my ward, in our ward, Hurley and the Waltham's ward. This has a hangar, which is very, very large on it, and the proposal is for 12 dwellings, and they've gone to an appeal. Our officer states further encroaching into the site areas which did not have existing substantial built form. So it was deemed as having greater impact on the openness. This is a previously developed site. It already has permission, by the way, for 3 houses, but they've come back for 12. And the officers are taking that to our appeal. If this goes ahead, that will contradict, set a precedent for our officers at the appeal, you know, that's already going on. The one thing I noticed, the screening provided by the existing Lelandai trees, which the officer remarked were owned by the airfield, and they could cut them down at any point, if that be their wish. But the officer says there will be little visual impact on the runways. Now, this is the first time in all the years I've been on planning that I've ever heard of any kind of mitigation used by trees for impact on the green belt. That doesn't happen. So that has to be totally negated, that paragraph. So there will be, it is impact on the green belt. I know it's previously developed land. It is in ED policy, ED2, but it is the green belt. It's not rural area. It's special green belt, and you do need very special circumstances. Now, as much as I think, you know, race, I'm a firm believer if you can use the green belt, whatever's in it, previously developed land, let's get things moving. This is not the place. The HGV movements, you've heard from the parish council and you've heard from Mr. Pyle, absolutely ridiculous if you expect those not giving off. I mean, they're all diesel, most of them, and we've heard today from Rishi Sunak about the cars and everything else, 2035 now, extended. So this is no good. It's the carbon giving off is humongous, it really is. And it's not good for anybody in the area. And then, of course, this bit of diversity, that what are they going to do? Now, that doesn't please me either. Within 5 kilometres. So they're going to put the extra 10% within 5 kilometres of the site. Why should other people gain? This is damaging our residents in Hurley and the Walthams. Why shouldn't we have the biodiversity if it goes ahead? So that is totally wrong, you know, not for other people. I really have thought about this. At the beginning, you think, oh, good to see offices that aren't used or not sold. Mark you, there's never been a gym there. And I don't think there's been coffee bars or restaurant. Might have been coffee bars, but not restaurants. And I know one large office building in the ward does have gym and restaurant. So, and they're okay. They're not having a problem. But it would be good to see officers used and that site used, because you do see the sign up, quite frankly, for many years, officers to rent. And I was excited to see, you know, let's see what's coming. But the more I looked at it, the more I couldn't believe it. This is just not the place for this, not near the residents, not all the CO2 emissions, not the impact on the green belt, not the query on the airfield, heaven forbid. And I really would have to put forward to refuse this. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Hunt. You said about putting forward to refuse this. Is that a motion? And if so, could you give the planning reasons that you would do for that motion? And then I'll bring in Councillor Reeves, Councillor Hill, and then Councillor Walters before moving on to others. But could you give us the planning reasons that you have?
Yeah. Oh, I'm on now. Impact on the green belt due to the volume, the huge increase in the volume, the height of the proposed buildings, the query on the effects to the airfield, because it's an unknown quantity at the moment with the glint and glare, the pollution, the lack of the biodiversity gain in the ward for the residents. What else have I forgotten? No, put the volume in. Oh, yeah. The increase in the traffic, not just the traffic, but the type of traffic, because previously there was very, very few vans and HGVs, it was mainly cars.
Councillor, can I very quickly bring in Gillian as Deputy Head of Planning before we then move on, if that's okay? Gillian.
Thank you very much. Just making sure that I've got the impact on the green belts. You're talking about the volume and the height, and because of that, you don't consider this very special. So it impacts the openness of the green belt, and you consider there's not very special circumstances. When it comes to,
can I add that they're going into car parking spaces on this proposal? In the appeal that's coming up next month, our own officers refused the application because they went outside the built area that is at the moment. So that is another thing.
So as Councillor Hunt will have seen, that in the report, it does cover the issues of this being a significant increase, and it does harm the openness of the green belt, but that the recommendation is based on the fact that there would be very special circumstances. Can I move on in terms of the other issues? In terms of pollution, as you will see, the Council's Environmental Protection Officer has raised no objection. So the Council's Environmental Protection Officer is the technical expert in that area and has raised no objection. Similarly, noise, the Council's Environmental Protection Officer is the technical expert in that area, has raised no objection. When it comes to highways, you'll have seen in the report and in the late papers that there is no objection from highways. All of these are based on there also being conditions and Section 106 in terms of highways, that highways have raised no objection. And I know that members and members of the public often find it very difficult because the bar in relation to impact on highways is set very high by the government's National Planning Policy Framework, which actually refers to any future impact on highways as needing to be severe. And in this case, the highway officer has not considered that. In terms of the impact on the airfield, if I could draw your attention to the fact that there is subject to conditions, no objection from, again, the expert in that area, which is the CAA, and it would be subject to condition. And also that this is an outline application. So some of the issues that you have identified can be dealt with through the reserve matter stage. I just wanted, I mean, I could give you the paragraph numbers, but I'm sure that Councillor Hunt has seen those. But in terms of technical matters, I know that members of the committee know how difficult it is to justify those if you have the experts in the field not raising objection. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Gillian. I was going to go to Councillor Reeves, but I wonder if very quickly I could come in, as it may maybe have helped Councillor Hunt and to other panel members. I've got concerns personally around the Greenbelt and the inappropriate development in the Greenbelt, obviously that we know it is, which would require very special circumstances. I note in the report that it talks about the viability and saying that a smaller site wouldn't be viable, but obviously we know that viability is a decision in the weighting that we take the viability as for us as the decision makers. The two key things for me about this development, as I see it, are the openness of the greenbelt and the inappropriateness of the development due to its impact on the openness, which would require those very special circumstances. The report hinges around very special circumstances being the viability, the social value, and the jobs created. Well, for me personally, I would give limited weight to that viability assessment for this particular item. I would give moderate weight to the social value, but I would give limited weight to the jobs because there is already the ability for jobs to take place on that site in the offices that are there presently. So that's where I would look at that weighting argument for those very special circumstances. And I don't believe that those very special circumstances outweigh the harm to the greenbelt in relation to inappropriateness of developments. So that's my feeling on the matter, and Councillor Hunt, that may help you in terms of the motion that you put forward and what support you may have in the room from other members, specifically on that greenbelt and that openness of development. Go to Councillor Reeves next.
I think, Mr. Chairman, you're agreeing with me on a lot of things.
I'm going to go to Councillor Reeves next, if I may. Councillor Reeves.
Thank you very much. Thanks for giving me the opportunity to speak. And I appreciate all the time and effort and the comments that residents have made, obviously councillor, and also all of the work that the officers have put into this particular report as well, including going out to the experts in various areas to get their opinions. There were a couple of concerns that I had. One of them, I think Councillor Hunt has talked about significantly, and that was around the airfield. And I know that there are very specific rules around the transitional area and surfaces to the runways. That also would impact the airfield CAA licence, and that is an extremely important facility that we must do our utmost to protect. I do also note that there is a key condition that has been made on the basis of the height. It's really important to note that that height of 16 metres has been noted as a condition. What I would like actually to be reiterated is that you can put 16 metres on top of this spoil or on top of the land that will be demolished, after demolishing it, the spoil, that would take it up another 2 metres. And that would effectively, if they didn't reduce the height of the actual building, would then impact the ability for the airfield to actually meet the requirements of their CAA licence. It's actually not the 16 metres, it's actually the height above sea level that is important. It's actually 54.5 metres above sea level. And so I'm quite shocked why we don't actually mention that in the report. It's a really key condition. Yes, 16 metres should be mentioned as the height, because that obviously frames the total capacity of the warehouse. And I understand that they have, in fact, actually the officer has done a job in reducing the size. The applicant actually applied for a bigger size of warehousing there, but because of the concerns, they actually got them to reduce it. However, I would, if this was to actually go through, we must make sure that the conditions are tight and that they do specifically mention about the height above sea level. I have concerns, obviously, of the fact that this is in the greenbelt, and I noted that if it's irreparable, harm to the greenbelt, I don't think anyone's disputing that you have to have the special circumstances. And I do feel that Councillor Reynolds has been eloquent in summarising some of the weighting that needs to be taken into account when giving consideration to the economic gain for actually the change of usage. Going on to the traffic situation, I think we've had a lot of people talking about the increase in traffic and about 800 trips of HGVs. When you actually look, there is actually data that's been given to us that we have to take into account, and that's the net change in traffic generation. If, which we all wish it was the case, these buildings were fully occupied, and actually we wouldn't even be having this conversation if they were, then the actual number of cars and traffic would be greater than the HGVs. We have, I've been informed, 1,500 car parking spaces on this particular site right now. And if you look at the total number of vehicles, it would actually be a negative of 325 per day reduction on the number of vehicles if it was at full occupancy. And I say that with the caveat, if it was at full occupancy. I also take on board the fact that HGVs are not like cars. They are diesel currently, and I'm one that believes that they should be investing more and more and quicker on technology to be able to change HGV heavy goods vehicles to a much better, less polluting version. We're not currently there, but the technology hopefully will catch up with us soon. The HGVs will obviously have an impact. They are professional drivers, and I'm afraid to say that I've been on roads with normal car users, and they are less vigilant, and they are not considerate of other road users in the same way that professional drivers are. And that is my opinion. And you can, people can argue against it, but I have seen lots and lots of accidents caused by car drivers. And car drivers, being particularly less vigilant, are causing, I would predominantly most of the accidents there, not HGV drivers. However, the pollutants that they give out is something we have to take into consideration for the residents in the local area. About the issue with the neighbouring villages, these traffic will go onto the A4 and onto the A404 and then onto the motorways. They won't be trying to use the villages. I do accept that what was brought up is if there is a road blockage on the 404, then they might try to go a different route. But I do feel that there are enough controls there. I also feel that there should maybe be a suggestion or some sort of signage that we can do as a council that states that any users of that site are not allowed to go any other direction except onto the A4 and the 404.
Please, Councillor Rees.
Thank you. So that then the traffic can be controlled, so it will not disturb all of the villages and will not actually take pollution to those villages. I appreciate this is a difficult one. We also have to take into account the fact that this is a very lightly used facility. We do have a responsibility to actually take into consideration the national planning policy, which does say that it can be, the green belt can be outweighed by other special circumstances. So I will have to take those into consideration when considering this application. Ideally, I wish that as I say, I wish the actual place was fully occupied and that we had more office workers taking residency there. But if that was the case, you'd have even more traffic on the roads and even more vehicles passing through those routes. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Rees. Thank you, Councillor Rees. The next speaker I've got is Councillor Waters, if that's okay. He's raised his hand visibly, and then it will be Councillor Hill. Thank you.
Thank you, Chairman. Just very brief. Plan-led borough plan, as we all know. And this particular application comes under EG2, as I think has already been mentioned. And it says in one of the paragraphs here, proposal to intensify the uses may also be supported subject to the provisions set out in national policy with regard to development within the green belt. So it says it should be encouraged, intensification should be encouraged, but it's all subject to the green belt and all those safeguards of the green belt which are contained in the NPPF, which for some reason or other I've lost my copy since I've just come back. I can't find it, which I asked the also where she let me have a copy. But the grounds to get out of the Greenbelt argument is very special circumstances. I hate to hear the fact that very special circumstances all revolve around money. I don't think it should be that way. A lot of people would like to think Greenbelt is sacrosanct because you cannot build anymore. And once you build on it, you've had it. With the volume increase here, which is what double, isn't it? About double the volume increase. It's admitted in the report that it will be detrimental to the Greenbelt. And on those circumstances, I think I know which way I'm going to vote. Thank you, Chairman.
Thank you. Councillor Hill.
Thank you very much, Chairman. An awful lot's been said, and I don't really want to repeat what other people have said. My struggle with this application is really quite simple, and that is, it is a previously developed site in the Greenbelt. It's almost a brownfield site, and it was actually previous to an office park. It was an industrial site, and that is its usage classification. And if my memory serves me right from what I'm told, I think they used to make aeroplanes there. And certainly it was heavy industry, because that is, let's face it, heavy industry. At the moment, its offices, they are hopelessly underutilised. I do think it's quite sad to walk around an office park that's empty. It really does go against the grain. When it comes to the traffic loading, there's going to be a net change in a downward direction. I appreciate there'll be HGVs. That will be the majority of the traffic. They are more polluting than cars, so the environmental aspect gives me great concern. The other concern I have is just the sheer scale of the thing. I'm looking at the plan now on my screen, and it is quite massive. So I'm not happy with the scale. It is actually chewing up all the car parking spaces virtually, which is not great. But my real worry with this is if we throw it out, and that's certainly the mood in the room, let's face it, there are a lot of you here tonight, and certainly the mood around of some councillors, whether we lose the appeal, because this actually was a heavy industrial site. And that's the one thing that hasn't really been mentioned tonight in any detail, and that is its heritage and its parentage. And that's not something anybody in the room, particularly the residents, want to hear. But that is the truth, and that's the fact of the matter. Yes, it would be an inappropriate development in the Greenbelt because we're using more land to put buildings on the land that we haven't had, not used at the moment. But I think if you look back at the parentage and you look at building aeroplanes, you're probably going back in the same direction as where this is right now. So, no, you can't argue with, no, please, that's not the way this works. I'm making a very serious point here about the borough getting itself potentially into a legal position that it can't win, and the borough costing itself a lot of money. And that's something we don't want to do. And I know it's not about money. It's about planning.
Please, this is not a meeting for public participation. This is a meeting of the council of which the public are invited to attend and observe.
And we are,
Thank you.
The chairman is trying to say, we are allowed to speak and voice an opinion. So it's a critical opinion that you don't want to hear. However, it is the truth and you have to face it. So I'm on the fence. I don't know which way I'm going to go. I prefer it wasn't happening, but I'm a realist as well. So that is where I am. Thank you, Chairman.
Thank you, Councillor Hill. The next speaker I've got is Councillor Bra.
Thank you, Chair. As Councillor Hill said, a lot has been said. This is in the Greenbelt, and obviously no special circumstances. The airfield, early on, the officer said part of the runway will be affected by this. Is a massive increase in development. Obviously, it's in the Greenbelt. It's going to affect the villages traffic-wise. which is border to my ward, which is Birches Green. Obviously, it'll affect White Wolf, a little bit Green, all of the villages. So the traffic movement will increase. I mean, from 76 extra movement within 24 hours, you were talking about 760 movements a day. Obviously, air pollution, CO emissions with the diesel lorries. A4 will be congested. Obviously, you're saying that the traffic will only travel in the report on A4, will go into A4. What guarantee this council can give us that if there is a congestion on A4, they will not go through villages? There's going to be signage, so the lorries can't go through the villages. What are we intending to do? I am sitting on the fence, but my worry is, the biggest worry is the traffic and the congestion.
Thank you, Councillor Bra. Councillor Singh, next, please.
Thank you, Chair. I have two major concerns with this. One is in the green belt and the height of the buildings themselves and the effect that's going to have on White Waltham Airfield, the landing and takeoff of aircraft. Although the CAA has been consulted and they've gone through points 10.36 to 10.38, the unknown factor here is the glint and the glare from the 12,000 or so solar panels. And if the building's still going to be at 16 meters, which they're assuring us, that will have a detrimental effect on that. And with the crosswinds, that could be a major safety issue. So I'm minded to vote against that, along with the traffic that's going to come along with this, with the HEV. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Singh. Just to remind panel, there is a motion on the table by Councillor Hunt. It doesn't yet have a seconder. Before I bring Councillor Hunt, Councillor Hill, and then Councillor Martin in, Gillian would like to say something.
Thank you, Chairman. I would again draw your attention to, I hear that there's concern over the impact on the airfield, but I do bring your attention back to the CAA's no objection, subject to conditions, etc., and the fact that this is an outline application and much of it would be the subject of future plans. Also, in terms of highways, that there is no objection from highways in terms of the vehicle movements or the impact on highway safety, subject to section 106 and conditions. But Chair, could I also bring Sarah back in from wherever she is to comment on the issues of very special circumstances, because in terms of the comment from Councillor Walters, this doesn't. The recommendation is not based on money, but it is based on the recommendation for very special circumstances is based on the impact of having a usable employment facility. But if I could ask for Sarah to come in and comment on the runway and very special circumstances.
Yeah, I'm still here.
Can you hear me? I'm not on.
We can hear you indeed. Please carry on.
Can you? You haven't got me on screen. I don't know whether you want to look at me or not, but there we are. So in terms of the very special circumstances just being about money, what we've got to look at here, we've got an underperforming economic use that has been not performing for some considerable length of time. And the question is, and when I first had this application, I thought, well, you know, it is inappropriate development in the Greenbelt. But what are we going to do with it? Do we let it rot and leave it empty? Do we look at something constructive in terms of what we essentially the applicant is doing, which is recycling the land from an economic use that's not performing, which is office use, not performing very well, which is what's happening because they've had low occupancy rates for some considerable length of time, and that is going to continue, which is what's happening with office uses across the country as a whole, and recycling that, excuse me, into a use that has a lot of potential for growth. And that is a public benefit of the scheme. And the MPPF is really clear. We should be looking at opportunities for growth. We should be looking at opportunities for flexibility in terms of economic development. We should, I accept that we've got a conflict with policy ED2. However, the BLP was written at a point in time, and economic development, what's happened in the world, has substantially changed since the BLP was drafted and approved. So we've got this situation, which is why I asked the applicants to do a needs assessment, and I got that independently verified. I asked the applicants to do a viability assessment, and I got that independently verified. The applicants have said to me that they cannot, basically, they cannot afford to develop a smaller scheme. It wouldn't be viable. So the banks essentially won't lend them to money to do it. So we've got to ask ourselves as a borough what we want to do with this site. It's allocated for employment use. The employment use that it's allocated for is struggling nationwide, and the proposal to recycle that use, because it is previously developed land, into a sector that is growing, is, I consider, a very special circumstance of considerable weight. But, you know, I've been really upfront about this being, I put the figures in, I didn't try to hide them at all in terms of the increase, in terms of area and volume. And bear in mind, these are maximums, so it may be slightly smaller. But we are looking at a site that is not doing anything at the moment economically. It's basically dying economically. So as a borough, we have to make a decision where we want to go with this site. And if we say we're not accepting this level of development, then that's fine. But what do we do with it in the longer term? And that's where I came from with this planning application, which is why, yeah, thank you.
Thank you, Sarah. I think for me personally, before I bring Councillor Hunses in, the point isn't against the principle of regenerating and using this site. It's a site with office buildings on it and needs to be used for something. I think the point that I've got is that there are a number of decision makers, me included, that believes that this specific development does not outweigh, with the benefits that it provides, does not outweigh the harm to the Greenbelt by dint of openness. For me, that's the point this hinges on. I don't think there's probably a councillor in the room, or probably a member of the audience in the room, that doesn't understand that something will happen to this site at some point. And there's probably no one that hasn't known that for quite a while, let's be honest. It's what it is. But Councillor Hunt, please.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Just a couple of points. The class use of the site, which Councillor Hill mentioned, that's been superseded by the office use, Class E. And I'm not sure if there's some B8 on it, but anyway, it's Class E. Now, getting on to what our officer's just been saying, that she's very concerned about recycling the land was mentioned, or the site. This isn't recycling, this is knocking down, totally demolishing and putting up a building that's 3 times in volume, you know, huge height of 16 meters, totally different, and hoping for all these HGVs, diesel HGVs to come in and out all the time. So that isn't it. And then our officer says we have to ask ourselves what we want to do with this site. Well, we haven't been asked. And also, and nobody's come to us with any choices. So I think that puts it in a nutshell where we are. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Hunt. Councillor Hill.
Yeah, just one very simple point on traffic movements in villages. It is possible to put something in called traffic regulation orders, which would actually stop HGVs moving down certain roads, except for legitimate access, deliveries or whatever. And certainly fire trucks and police vehicles, buses, they all get access. So that actually can be overcome. I've said what I want to say. I think we're going to get ourselves into deep water with this one, but that's what the planning panel's for sometimes. Okay, bye-bye.
Thank you, Councillor Hill. Councillor Martin.
Yeah, without trying to repeat what everybody else is saying, the conflict that I have the biggest issue with, I don't have an issue with the recycling of the land as such in principle, but it could be something like a data centre or something like that as an alternative. However, we are where we are, but the thing is that's bothering me most on the climate change side of things is it's designed to minimise pollution, be adaptable to climate change and also consider health and well-being. Yet the next section, highways impacts, say the proposals lead to an overall reduction of vehicle trips, albeit with a significant increase in HGV. So it's back to that one again. The increase in HGV, cars today are more, better for the climate. HGV is still diesel, to have an impact with that. And also it's saying somewhere that it's a 5 kilometre impact. Thicket roundabout is extremely busy at school hours. How is that going to affect it when lorries are coming off the A404, turning right onto the A4? They seem to be talking about Westercott Way in the main, rather than that roundabout there, which I know backs up because I use it a lot. And that's all I have to say. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Martin.
Thank you.
There is a motion that is being proposed by Councillor Hunt. The motion currently doesn't have a seconder. Councillor Hunt, our lovely legal officer, Helena.
Thank you, Chair. Councillor Hunt, can I just confirm with you directly what the harm is that you say is your reason for putting the motion on for refusal? We do, in respect of any potential appeal, have to be very, very clear on why it is that we're going against officer recommendation. Councillor Hill actually has done part of my job for me in going down that road. And just so that I can be very clear, so I can then turn to my colleagues in planning to ask them about any potential success rate.
Before I bring Councillor Hunt in, I think it might be helpful just to share, because we haven't got a seconder yet for this motion, so there isn't a formal motion that is on the table for this. I think for myself, Councillor Hunt, I would probably support and second your motion if we were very specific on the specific greenbelt issues. I think we open ourselves up potential risk of a cost awarded appeal if we are unreasonable in some of our recommendations, not from a personal level, but from a specific planning point of view. So I would be prepared quite happily to support your motion if we were saying very specifically on greenbelt development, the volume, the height, and the impact that that would have on the greenbelt, and that not outweighing the benefits of the scheme, so we wouldn't have very special circumstances. That's what I would be quite happy to support that. I wouldn't be happy necessarily to support other items that was mentioned earlier on during the debate, although I think they're important. I think there's risk that we would be seen as unreasonable if it were to go to an appeal. So that's where I'm coming from. So I'll leave that with you, obviously, but as I say, we don't have a motion currently on the table as we haven't got a seconder.
Certainly all the greenbelt policies need to come into it, high volume, etc., etc. I'm concerned with the airfield. The glint and glare hasn't been, as far as I'm concerned, that hasn't been a solution come through on that one, because I have conflicting remarks here in the two papers. So that is a concern as well. See what else? I do actually think the highways, it's the amount of HGVs, not the fact that there's one or two HGVs, as one would expect with any big company. But this is the amount, and the applicants themselves have stated how many per day. And I think until all these HGVs are electrified or hydroelectric something or other now that's coming in, but that's a few years away as well. Unless that's done, then I think the pollution aspect, I can't believe our officer hasn't looked at 800 HGVs and the diesel coming out of them when there's a housing just directly on the same road.
Thank you, Councillor Hunt. So
would you be interested in putting that in as well, Mr. Chairman?
I personally wouldn't be prepared to second a motion which included vehicles and traffic as part of its wording. Although I think it's significant and important, I feel doing so might open us up to losing costs if this were to go to appeal. So I would be a lot more comfortable and very happy to second your motion on Greenbelt reasons and Greenbelt reasons alone. I don't disagree that it's great harm to be caused by the traffic, but I think we open ourselves up to political costs being awarded at appeal if we do so. So that's very firm where I stand.
Can we put it as an informative then, these other things?
For an informative, I'll probably delegate this to Gillian and the team.
Sorry, Chair, I'm not entirely clear as to what an informative.
Councillor, do you want to talk through that with Gillian?
On the refusal, that we are refusing for the Greenbelt situation, but we have concerns as an informative about the glint and glare from such a high building. 12,000 square meters is no small sum from such a high building, because that has never been done before.
I would say, Councillor Hunt, personally, if our refusal reasons are on Greenbelt, but we are making clear more generally that we have concerns that we're not specifically included in our refusal reasons, but we have concerns about X, Y, and Z as well.
Yeah,
that makes me feel a lot more comfortable. But Gillian, I would defer to you on whether legally we're allowed to do so.
And concerns about the HG.
Well, I will ask our legal officer to come in, but what I would say is you don't really have informatives on a refusal, and so you need to be very clear and precise about your refusal. However, if you are refusing the application, and we don't know that yet, if it does go for a refusal and the applicant decides to appeal the decision, then there is an opportunity for everyone in this room to give their views to the planning inspectorate that would make a decision. And if these issues are the ones that are of particular concern to you in terms of highways or any aspect of the, the number of HGVs, then you could raise them with the decision maker at that time, and that would be the planning inspectorate. In terms of the glint and glare.
Excuse me, just on that point, can I bring up that the appeals that I've seen, the inspector looks at what the appeal is about, not what other people bring in or residents bring in at a later date. It's just what the appeal has been refused on. The fact that, I mean, I've had it before. I think
where it might be helpful now, Councillor Waters has indicated to speak very quickly, so I'll allow Councillor Waters to speak and then we'll come back, because that might help us solve any impasse that we might be at. Councillor Waters.
Briefly, I was sort of criticised and say it's all about money, but you only have to look at page 53 of the officer's report under paragraph 10.14, and it's all about money. It talks about the viability of a 30% increase, then it says it's not viable, then there'll be a deficit of 5 million. I think the ground at which you've explained, Chairman, is that it is a green belt is the main objection, but for very special circumstances is a very thin argument. And I think on the ground, you know, yes, it is about money. I mean, and to be asked, as the officer suggested, what are we going to do with the site? It's not up to us, it's up to the person who owns the site. You can't pass the burden of what he's going to do with the site, that's up to him. And if he wants to make future planning applications to turn it into an agricultural field, well, fine. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Walters. Councillor Martin and Councillor Hill.
It mentions there's an increase in floor space, but on 10.16, it says paragraph 137 of the MPPF states that the fundamental aim of Greenbelt policy is to prevent urban sprawl. So that's probably worth some consideration too.
Thank you, Councillor Martin. Councillor Hill.
Just a very quick one on glint and glare. I used to fly, but it was a long time ago. I used to fly small aeroplanes and have landed at a number of airfields around the country. And sometimes they're in very densely populated places. And also there are roads nearby. And solar panels, to my mind, don't really represent a real risk. I wouldn't have thought it was a reason for refusal. I'm trying to help you here, Maureen. I just don't see it. I mean, you look at Heathrow, look at Hong Kong, Singapore, some of the other airfields in the Swiss mountains. I think we're on to a loser with that one. Thanks, Chairman.
Thank you. We're going to bring Gillian in next before we move over to Councillor Reeves.
In terms of moving forward, and if members are to look at a potential refusal, in terms of glint and glare, as was being referred to, in the recommended conditions, in condition 12, it does state that reserve matters applications would be, you know, that we would expect to see the details of glint and glare. And that would then become an issue at an appeal and would become an issue when anybody was looking at common ground, for example. And often, I mean, planning inspectors do have to take into account the comments that they receive from all parties. But if I could ask if the legal officer could comment, thank you.
Sure. Echo what Gillian said. It's exactly correct. What we have to be very careful here of is if members are minded to go against officer recommendation and refuse, we do have to be very clear and precise about the reasons that you're giving. Councillor Reynolds has obviously made very clear his feelings on particular points brought up and whether that would then impact the appeal and the success of the appeal. As Councillor Reynolds says, until we have a second motion, it's hard for me to put to the planning officers the question of potential success at appeal, but that is something that I would urge members to bear in mind.
Thank you, Helen. Councillor Reeves.
Thank you very much. I'm in agreement with obviously the issue that definitely that we have an issue with the impact on the openness of Greenbelt. That's absolute. I don't think anyone disputes that, including myself, around having this increased in size and also height. I think that's indisputable, the fact that it will impact the openness of the Greenbelt. I think the key thing with that is the test being that it has to, we have to give consideration to the MPPF, which says that you have to give certain weighting to the very special circumstances that can outweigh it. I think in the report under 10.8, the officer talks about significant weight should be placed on the need to support economic growth. That's under paragraph 81 of the MPPF and productivity. And we have to obviously take that into account. I heard what Councillor Reynolds was saying about the weighting, and I think that's something that we've kind of glossed over here and that we haven't actually picked up on again, is whether we agree that significant weighting should be given to that consideration, because that is what is trying to counteract the openness issue that we've been raising. And I think we've forgotten to discuss that completely. And I think that that is key to actually some of the reason why we could be minded to actually refuse this, is that we don't think that the economic growth that we will get from changing this to a logistics facility from an office one. We talked about like the potential for local economic growth. To be honest, I think the distribution centre and the logistics is not going to be from a local company. It's going to be from a national company. I mean, I'm not going to name some of the big companies out there that actually have these facilities. They are going to be getting the economic growth from this development, and not local residents and not local people within Maidenhead. I also think, yes, they're offering an olive branch with regard to local employment. But again, it's no guarantees. I've been to interviews and applied for jobs before. There's no guarantee you'll get it. And also the fact is that I haven't seen that we can guarantee that that would be the case. I think they're saying it's a Section 106 guarantee that there would be a percentage of that that would be local. But is 40% enough for us to actually give this serious, considerable weighting? I don't think 40% is enough. Why is it not 80%, 90% of employment that should be going to locals for this change? And also there's another thing is, this is not in compliant with some parts of the BLP. So there's policy ED2, we've talked about this, and it has to be outweighed by this economic growth. That ED2 states quite clearly that this class of use is not considered under the BLP. They then go on to say, well, actually, we should reconsider the BLP and what the condition of class use is there because of the change of circumstances. You know, not many people are going to the office. And I can tell you, I used to be fully working from home. After the pandemic, 2 days working in the office. My company has now made it 3 days working from the office. I've spoken to other people where actually that is now evolving and changing. They're full-time back at the office. I think it's just only time before actually that will happen. A lot of the reason is because face-to-face collaboration is key. Communication is only 10% of what the actual words you say is only 10%. 80 to 90% is other forms of communication. And that's why all of these companies are realizing that they do need to get people back into the office and not just sitting at home and logging on through Zoom. So all of this has to be taken into account when we consider about the reason to vary from the BLP policy. I think I've been guided quite often to say that the BLP shouldn't be varied from significantly, and it feels like in this case they are actually giving us a reason or trying to give us a justification to vary from the BLP. It makes me think, so we have a much greater need for social housing, for example, yet a lot of the things in the BLP don't offer that. And so should we just change the BLP completely because of the change of circumstances around that? So I go back to my original point, which is it has to be greatly and considerably outweighed by this economic growth. And I'm afraid at the moment, with everything that's been taken into account, that's potentially where I feel that this isn't quite meeting the mark. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Reeves. I want to bring Gillian in to talk about the reasons for refusal as well.
Chair, having listened there to Councillor Reeves, I am very concerned that we have evidence-based documents from experts in the fields of, you know, what the demand is in various sectors within the economy and the local economy. And also there is national evidence, I don't have it to my fingertips, but about the change in the approach to working. And I hear what you say about there is an increase in some businesses, you know, from no days to maybe a few days. But essentially, this is an office park that has been and is vacant, has been and is being marketed. And in terms of the that for a potential refusal, I don't think without solid evidence backed by, you know, an expert, it would be sustainable in terms of a refusal. So I think overall the message that, or the comment I would have to say, and we still, you know, we don't have a seconder, but I am concerned about reasons for refusal that you may, that Councillor Hunt may be looking at, that don't have the backing of clear evidence and don't have the identified harm, particularly as this is an outline application. It is not a detailed application, it's not a full application, and therefore there's a lot of matters that are covered within the condition and can be addressed at the detailed stage. So for any reason for refusal to be sustainable, it must be evidence-based and must relate to the type and form of the application before you. And I did hear that, you know, we have to determine the application before us. This is not, as members know, the forum where we can pick and choose and have a range of different options available to us. It is this application before you tonight. And if there are aspects of it that you are unhappy with, you would need to be able to clearly identify the planning harm, the harm that can be sustained should the applicant go to appeal on it. In terms of, I don't know.
Thank you, Kit. I think that's really helpful to stand in. I think there are 3 hands raised at the moment. In the interests of moving the conversation and developing the conversation, I would be interested to hear if any of the 3 panel members who've got their hands raised are proposing or are planning to propose or second a motion either that's on the table or put a new motion forward in the interest of trying to advance the conversation to get us towards a determination this evening. Councillor Bra.
My question is the viability report and the evidence which the officer is saying is available to them. Why aren't they shared with the councillors who are making the decision?
I believe the viability report should be on the planning portal. Just checking for things nod ahead to say it should be on there. I believe it is. Councillor Hill, are you going to help us advance the conversation forwards?
Yeah, I think I am. I just want to talk about homeworking a little bit, which is what has killed this office park, and as well as the facility that they've got there. Oh, I had a conversation today with a very senior officer here at the borough. We have people working in Liverpool, Glasgow, the Isle of Wight, working from home, very, very successfully. It's part of the brief that I've got as the lead member. If you look at what's happened in the borough, Vanwell Business Park, we've approved several planning applications there where offices are being demolished and flats are being built. Yeah. I know some people don't like it, but that's the reality. Drive around Vanwell Business Park, there's a lot of empty offices. And I think there's another one coming forward, if my memory serves me right. That's in my ward, in Oldfield Ward. If you look at this place, it's been decimated. It's absolutely decimated. Those offices are the sort of offices that I used to work in when I was considerably younger, about 20 or 30 years younger. The place has been decimated. That's why the applicant, and we may not like the application, I'm not that keen on it, but that's why that's before us. So I do not take your point on homeworking. If anything, it's becoming embedded in certain areas where people can realistically work from home very well, turn up for a team meeting, say once a week. In our cases, the people in outlying areas are coming either once a month or once every 2 months to maintain the relationships. So it's here to stay, and there is not a sustained drift back to work. In cases where face-to-face contact is needed, then yeah, certain individuals, but not for the bulk of your office workers. I'm sorry, the argument just doesn't stand up. And you look at how the way we operate with these computers, with Zoom and Teams, and God, God knows what else with the officer who dialed in who's got COVID. We never used to do that. So it's, again, I know I'm not probably very popular in the room, but it's harsh realities have got to be faced. And, you know, that's what I want to say about homeworking. We're doing it here in the borough. You look at how much office space we use, it's considerably less than the office space we used to use because so many officers are working from home. Thank you very much, Chairman.
Thank you, Councillor Hill. I'll reiterate my comments to Councillor Hunt on my position to be happy to second the motion to advance to a decision if we are basing our motion solely on Greenbelt, the volume, the height and the openness. Councillor Walters has indicated speaking, then move to Councillor Hunt.
On Greenbelt grounds. I mean, there are overwhelming reasons for that. 300, what is it? Where is it now? 330%.
Councillor Walters, sorry to jump in, just to confirm. So you're happy to second Councillor Hunt's motion on the same basis that I put forward in terms of the Greenbelt grounds purely?
Yes.
Councillor Hunt, is there any thoughts that you have on the offers from myself and Councillor Walters?
Well, I'm just very pleased to let me put this on. I'm just very pleased to see that there is some conclusion to this. And I do have a seconder.
We hope there will be.
Well,
there isn't yet, but we hope there will
to get a seconder, put it that way. And just one point about officers to dwellings that Councillor Hill brought up in Vanwell. That was actually refused. It went to appeal and it got granted on appeal. Since that appeal, and because we were also concerned with, on an employment site, officers going to dwellings, I believe the administration is now looking at an Article 4. Yeah, which you just agreed. Thank you. Yes. So that's the concern we have. We lost that appeal, but with an Article 4 on it.
Just to bring us back
anyway,
to
let's
the point
move
that's
back.
being made in the room tonight, if that's okay, Councillor Hunt.
Okay. Yeah, I'm very happy on that one. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Hunt. So to confirm that there's now a motion and a seconder, a proposer and a seconder for a motion to refuse the application based on Greenbelts, based on inappropriateness of development in the Greenbelt for volume and height that does not outweigh very special circumstances proposed by the scheme. Helena, did you want to come in very quickly?
Thank you, Chair. If I may I also just confirm, was that also openness? One of the reasons under the Greenbelt grounds for the spatial openness. Thank you. Thank you, Councillor.
Yes, it is that paragraph on the openness, spatial, etc., etc.
Thank you. Chair, if I may refer to my planning colleagues, for the reasons now that we've got there, the reasons put forward for the motion to refuse, what would the potential success at appeal be, if you're able to give a comment on that?
As this is the Greenbelt, and we all know that it has a special designation, and it is a matter for the decision maker to balance the issues of the openness and the weight to be given to very special circumstances, then I think that reason could potentially succeed at appeal. I would have had to advise that none of the other reasons that you suggested earlier would have, in my view, had the evidence that would have been required.
Thank you, Gillian. I do, of course, in my role, have to advise members there is, of course, a chance that if it were to be appealed, the appeal may go against the council's decision to refuse. There may potentially be a cost implication. That, of course, would be a decision for the planning inspector who will be dealing with that.
Thank you, Helena. Councillor Walters, very quickly before I ask Will to move to the votes.
We seem to be getting ourselves in the position, this meeting, of making us responsible what to do with the site. It's up to the owner what he does with the site. Yeah, we're giving planning permission or not giving planning permission. And the overwhelming ground for refusal is the Greenbelt ground.
I don't
And that's
disagree,
it.
Councillor Waters, yes, and
All
that
this
is the
business
motion
about
that is on
people
the
going to the
table.
office in the day and not
Definitely.
going in the office is the periphery to the whole argument.
Thank you, Councillor Waters. So there is a motion on the table proposed by Councillor Hunt and seconded by myself. Will, are you happy to take us to the votes?
And I've got the wording if you want.
And Gillian is happy. So Gillian, do you want to read the wording out of the motion and then we'll take us to the votes? Thank you.
From everything I've heard from members this evening, the proposal, by reason of an increase in floor space, volume and overall scale of the buildings, would result in a development which would constitute inappropriate development in the Greenbelt, which is by definition harmful to the Greenbelt. Inappropriate development should not be approved except in very special circumstances. No very special circumstances associated with the development have been identified which outweigh the harm to the Greenbelt by reason of its inappropriateness. Furthermore, the proposal, due to the large increase in scale of the building, would be harmful to the openness of the Greenbelt. As such, the proposal fails to comply with the numbers of the paragraphs of the MPPF and the local plan. I hope members will give us some leeway just to polish that up. If that captures what you are.
Very much so. Thank you, Gillian. Will, would you like to take us through the votes?
So we are now voting on the motion. Councillors, they can either agree, abstain, or vote against. So I will start off with Councillor Martin. Yeah, for refusal. Sorry, for refusal. Councillor Hunt. The motion. Councillor Waters. For. Councillor Bra. Councillor Hill. Councillor Reeves. Councillor Singh. And Councillor Reynolds. Four. Okay. So the vote was 6 in favour of the motion of refusal and 2 against, so the motion carries.
Thank you, everybody. Thank you, everybody. That application is rejected. We'll take a few minutes break and we will come back in a few minutes' time. Thank you. Thank you, everybody. We're going to now move back to the way the agenda was structured originally. So we're now going to do land west of Switchback Road. So Alison, do you want to take us through that one very quickly?
Yeah, I'll just share my screen. Hopefully. Okay, so the application site is located at Switchback Farm, which lies to the north of Moulders Lane and west of Switchback Road in Cookham. Vehicle access to the site is from Switchback Road. The site lies within the Greenbelt and is identified as being within Source Protection Zone 2 and on a principal aquifer bedrock, meaning that groundwater in the surrounding area is vulnerable and sensitive to potential impacts. The application seeks part retrospective planning permission for the erection of 25 polytunnels for the rearing of turkeys with associated feed silos and the formation of road chippings to form a network of tracks within the site. The lawful use of the site is for agriculture, and the use of the land for a turkey farm is an agricultural use. As such, there is therefore no change of use of the land for the rearing of turkeys, and the application relates only to the works within the description of developments. The application is part retrospective as 20 of the polytunnels and associated works have been constructed on the site, as can be seen on the aerial image on this slide. The polytunnels are grouped into 5 groups, with the southernmost group of polytunnels not yet having been constructed. As you can see on this image, so the 4 of them are there, and it's the southernmost in the top left of the screen that hasn't been constructed. The polytunnels are each constructed using a steel structure and tube legs staked directly into the ground and covered with polythene. Each individual polytunnel has a width of 8.5 meters and a height of approximately 5 meters, which are then grouped together. As built, the polytunnels have a length of 70 meters by 33 meters. There is no hard standing below the polytunnels, and both ends are open to the elements. Adjacent to the polytunnels are 4.5 meter high galvanized steel feeding silos. The following slides will show a number of images of the works, which is from the application, which I can flick through now. The structures are set back and screened from Switchback Road and away from surrounding residential properties, utilising the existing vehicle access. I'll just move through the slides images quickly for you. The structures are for an agricultural use and therefore represent appropriate development within the Greenbelt. It has been demonstrated through the submission of a flood risk assessment and a hydrogeological assessment that the risk of pollution to controlled waters in the area is acceptable and can be appropriately mitigated through recommended condition. The officer recommendation is to grant planning permission with the conditions set out in 13 of the officer's report. Thank you.
Thank you, Alison. We've got 3 registered speakers on this application. First of all, we'll go to Dix Scarf. You've got 3 minutes to speak. When the light goes red, you will be able to start speaking, and the clerk will remind you when you have 1 minute to go. The silver button on the right-hand side, please. On the front, just below the screen. Kirsty's going to come down now and help. There you go, that's it. It will go red in 2 seconds, and when it goes red, you can start speaking.
Right, fine, thank you very much. I'm speaking on behalf of the Cookham Society. We do not like the sight of polytunnels in the Greenbelt, but we have to accept that these are agricultural buildings on agricultural land. We have never, therefore, objected outright to this application. However, we would like additional conditions attached which address our 3 most significant concerns. The panel update report provides a response to our concerns regarding the effect of this development on our water supply. We have only had a very limited time to digest this update, but it has failed to alleviate our concerns regarding the siting of this activity in Source Protection Zone 1 and 2. This appears to be a singularly unfortunate choice of site for an activity that will produce a large amount of turkey droppings on the ground surface. The HRA and FRA reports from Vector Structures and the reply from the EA seemed to deal solely with the effect of nitrate pollution on water supply. We have concerns regarding the passing of pathogens from the turkey droppings into our water supply, and we request that a condition is imposed that ensures that no further turkeys are put on the site until EA have unequivocally stated that the transfer of pathogens to our water supply is not a risk. The suggestion in the update, page 4, that all is satisfactory because no mention of pathogens is made in the report by South East Water is inadequate, especially as they refer to the current arrangements as inadequate. Also, I can't rely on anything in the HRA or FRA reports because consultants disclaim any responsibility to third parties. We are still requesting, therefore, reassurance from the EA as an independent, responsible regulator.
1 minute.
Secondly, one of the key purposes of putting land into the green belt is to prevent settlements merging. We don't want to see Maidenhead and Cookham merge, and this site is in the narrowest gap between them. We request a condition to ensure that these polytunnels and other installations are no longer required, when they are no longer required for turkey rearing, they are promptly removed from the site and the site returned to other agricultural use. Thirdly, silos are large, high and shiny. Please can we have a condition to be added to require these to be painted a dull green. That's 3 conditions we would like. 1, to further protect our water supply and dispel many residents' concerns about what might happen to it. 1, to protect a very important part of the green belt from further unwanted development in the area. And 1, to reduce the visual impact of unsightly industrial equipment to a minimum. Additionally, we note that the wording of the conditions requested by the EA has not been adopted. Can I just finish the sentence?
We've got 1 sentence left, please do.
Sorry, can I finish?
1 sentence, if you want 1 sentence, please.
Thank you. Additionally, we note the wording for conditions requested by the EA has not been strictly followed in the wording suggested conditions in the officer's report. Okay, thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Scuff. The next speaker I have is from the Parish Council, and that is Parish Councillor Edwards. You've got 3 minutes to speak. If you just press, and it will go red when you are able to start your 3 minutes. Thank you.
I'm speaking on behalf of Cookham Parish Council. Firstly, I'd like to remind councillors of a brief history of this application to construct the infrastructure to raise tens of thousands of turkeys on the green belt between Cookham and Maidenhead. It was submitted almost 2 years ago in October 2021 as a retrospective application for work already started that summer. As a result, Cookham Parish Council and other bodies swiftly raised serious potential health concerns that the large amount of turkey feces generated by this development in a source protection zone would contaminate local land and water supplies, including the drinking water boreholes only 700 metres away in Cookham, and also create airborne health hazards to nearby residents. Since then, in violation of planning regulations, 2 complete Christmas seasons of turkeys have already been raised on this land close to local residents, without these vital pollution and health concerns being resolved or planning permission being granted. It is in everyone's best interests that Cookham and Maidenhead residents are not put at risk in this way. We welcome the very recent submission of the HRA report commissioned by the developer. However, we are still extremely concerned that this and other reports only relate to potential nitrate pollution. They, including the panel update report published this afternoon, do not consider in any substantive way the important risk of contamination of the local environment, including the very nearby drinking water boreholes, by known turkey-borne pathogens such as Salmonella, Campylobacter, and Listeria. We urge councillors to refuse planning permission for this development, or at the very least impose a condition that no further turkeys are put onto the site until a comprehensive written report from the Environmental Agency, the expert independent regulator, has unambiguously confirmed that the potential risks from turkey-borne pathogens will not affect our residents' safety. Also, given the history described, going forward, we urge councillors to insist that rigorous, frequent inspections and monitoring are carried out on this already operational development to ensure that all recommended safe farming practices are being followed, and if not, that these are vigorously and promptly enforced. We finally note that the site of this development spans a very narrow and sensitive area of the Greenbelt between Cookham and Maidenhead. Should it be determined to be safe, we request additional enforced conditions attached to any planning permission that ensure that firstly, the existing intrusive feed silos are painted dull green, and secondly, that if these polytunnels and other installations are no longer required for turkey rearing, they're quickly removed and the fields returned to their original pasture or arable use. Thank you.
Thank you, Parish Councillor Jackie Edwards. Finally, we have the applicants. There are two applicants who have registered to speak. Obviously, only one of them will be able to, either Mr. Alam or Mr. Kopus, who I'm sure will comment on all of the things raised by the Cookham Society and the Parish Council. Thank you.
For the opportunity to address you tonight, representing Kopus Turkeys. Tom had intended to present this evening, but regrettably, he is currently tending to his health. Additionally, I'd like to thank the Planning Officer for the recommendation for approval. We are committed to ensuring that our farming activities have a positive impact on the community, and we generally appreciate the support that allows us to continue our farming endeavours. Like any business, Kopus has encountered numerous challenges in recent times. Expansion of turkey rearing on Switchback land has proven to be a valuable asset during these trying periods in several ways. During the planning process, we are aware of the local concerns of Kopus Turkeys, and Kopus Turkeys has diligently considered and implemented measures to mitigate, reduce, and minimise any such impacts. These measures are comprehensively outlined in our submission. In summary, South East Water, the Environment Agency, RBWM's Environmental Health and Highways Authorities have expressed satisfaction with these measures. So everything that's been raised to today, all the technical reports have all met everybody's recommendations. This expansion has enabled Kopus Turkeys to hire more local staff, enhance their workforce, and allow partnering with local businesses, which include the following: local farmers and landowners for muck for straw deals, local businesses for supplies, vehicle maintenance and hedge cutting and machine repairs, investment in machinery and staff in various projects. They are also suppliers to local pubs and restaurants. The new tunnels at Switchback Farm has allowed Kopus to enter a new market to provide premium turkeys to larger processors. This diversifies their business and reduces risks, as historically we are solely supplied high street butchers and retail, which can be highly susceptible to external economic influences. Since 2019, our planting projects have resulted in the establishment of over 5,500 trees within our turkey ranges and paddocks as part of our Natural England's More Wood scheme. This type of planting not only serves as cover for our turkeys, but also contributes to increased biodiversity. Such an endeavour would not have been feasible if our farm was dedicated solely to arable farming. In the long term, these plantings will serve as biodiversity stepping stones across the landscape. Additionally, we have undertaken tasks of planting new hedges and rejuvenating existing ones, along with introducing public footpaths on our land in accordance with best farming practices. In conclusion, all these initiatives are part of our commitment to make our business more sustainable, with the hope that it will be passed on to future generations, much like Thomas's grandfather did. Thank you very much for your time and consideration.
Thank you very much. Before I open up for members, I just wondered if I could bring Alison in on this. Obviously, the Cookham Society and the Cookham Parish Council raised 3 conditions that they believe would be of benefit to be added to this development, which in their mind would make it more acceptable as a development. Is there something, Alison, we can talk about either as a condition or as a informative about the colour of these silos and returning the land back to original when finished?
Okay, so firstly on the points in terms of retrospective, as you know, yes, it is, we haven't shied away from the fact that it is a part of retrospective application, but we need to determine it in accordance with the development plan policies. In terms of the concerns about groundwater, as set out in the report, there has been formal consultation with the Environment Agency, and they have raised no objection following the submission of the FRA on the HIA. Subject to a number of recommended conditions. The wording in the conditions that have been drafted, they do not entirely replicate the wording that the Environment Agency have suggested. However, I would assure you that the content of them is still covered in terms of what they need to see. So just wanted to clarify on that. The concerns in terms of pathogens, as I said, Environment Agency, as their expert body, have raised no objection, and set out in the update report, when South East Water conducted their visit back in January 2022, they raised no objections from that element as their part of their duty as a water supply company. So in my view, a further condition would not be necessary to demonstrate that there wouldn't be any harm to groundwater in the surrounding area. With regards to painting the silos green, as they currently stand, they are a galvanized steel, so they will dull and age over time. So they will not appear as sort of stark as they perhaps said in the concerns raised about that. If it was something that members wanted to see, we could require them to be painted green, as some of the other conditions are worded within 1 month of the date of the decision. With regards to the condition returning the land to the, as it previously was, obviously the application is in front of us, and I do not think such a condition would meet the relevant test for the imposition of conditions.
Thank you, Alison. I'll open up to panel members who would like to start us off. Councillor Brough.
Thank you, Chair. First of all, it's in my ward. I have called this in. Although it is in the green belt, it is agricultural land, and it's appropriate to have a turkey sheds in the green belt. What my worry is, it is inappropriate land. The land also is in zone 1SBZ9. Obviously, my two of the speakers have also mentioned about the water supply, danger to the residents. The turkey droppings can obviously mix into the drinking water, which could be a danger to the residents. And obviously, it's not just the Cookham residents, it could be First Black North and the Maidenhead as well. My second point will be the main adverse impact on polytunnels would result in large expansion in shiny plastic membranes used to cover them. These have been potential to be an eye-catching and clearly unnatural element of the landscape, which are contrary to policy QP1, section 15 on the NPF, Cookham BDS, and landscape character assessment. The polytunnels lead to more intensive farming truncally is part of the landscape. It's also been demonstrated there wouldn't be any harmful, it hasn't been demonstrated that there would be any harmful impact on biodiversity. There are hedgerows there, there's trees within the application site, and the impact isn't clear that the ecological value, contrary to local plan policies QP1, NR2 and NR3, and section 15 of the NPPF. The proposal would also affect the painting of the landscape of the local artist, Sir Stanley Spencer. This would make the land a non-designated heritage asset, contrary to local plan QP1 and HE1 section 16 of the NPF and Cookham BDS. Other potential harm, the highway, safety, using narrow country lanes, local plan policy 1F2 section 9 of the NPPF. The residential amenity noise, smell, dust from the poultry, local plan policy EP1, section 15 of the NPPF. This is all I have to say for the moment, and I let the rest of the panel have their say.
Thank you,
before I say any
Councillor
more.
Burrell. Thank you.
Thank you.
Next speaker is Councillor Reeves.
Thank you very much. I've listened to the concerns, obviously, that have been expressed, and also read through all the additional information and the reports, hope in answer to some of those concerns. I just wanted to point out, it seems to me that we're not the experts here in pathogen transference into water or the risk of turkey feces polluting our drinking water. I'm hugely concerned because of some of the current climate of the lack of responsibility that water companies have been taking recently in actually polluting rivers and other bodies of water. That's been evidenced, and that is evidenced, by the way, by other reports and that are out there about their lack of commitment to that. So that was a concern. However, when looking at the report, I can see that South East Water have actually been on site and produced a report of which they have said that they will ensure the highest safety standards, and also that they do have the technology and water treatment processes to cover any of the pathogens that are in there, as stated under Appendix G of the HRA. I also see that environmental, the EA has confirmed that when looking at the risk posed to groundwater, they have also satisfied and confirmed that the HRA and FRA does provide them with that confidence that suitable management will be done. They have actually already had turkeys on this site, and quite a number of them already, for 2 years. And on that basis, with all the testing that would be done, there would have, I think, been potentially raised risks already, that would have already passed into the groundwater and also gone into the risk our drinking water. I do take it very seriously, the health of our residents, but believe that looking through this, that all consideration appears to have been entered into and thought through about that, and that conditions are being recommended to ensure that there's suitable control around the removal of the manure and the control. I actually really like I like the idea of repainting the silos as a condition. That appears to be something that hasn't been considered here. And I know that you said that they will galvanize over time, and there's the very sharp silver nature of them, but that's over a long time before that will happen. And I think it will have an immediate effect on locals that are either using the footpaths or in trying to enjoy the countryside in that area. So I would be minded to want to put forward a proposal to actually go with the recommendation of the planning officer, so long as we have an additional condition on there around the painting or treatment of the silos to immediately or within a certain, a short period of time to either to paint them green or to do something to remove the shiny nature of the material.
Thank you, Councillor Reeves. You said you're minded to put forward a motion. Are you?
I mean, I will put forward a motion.
Fantastic. Thank you, Councillor Reeves. Councillor Hunt.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Chairman. This, unlike the previous application we heard, is a local business who support other local businesses, and we're all aware of what Copus does and how they have enhanced the area in other forms as well, not just this. In the Rural Forum last year, it came forward about the biodiversity, and the farmers were so helpful and wanted to contribute, the sides of their land and put all sorts of things for diversity. And I have to thank the farmers for that as well. I know they've undergone all sorts of problems with the bird flu and everything else. So it's congratulations that they've managed to overcome all these adversities. With what Councillor Reeves has come forward with, mentioning about the pathogens, the water, southeast water, etc., etc., I am in agreement with him, and I would like to second the motion in line with the officer's permission. I would also like to second the informative that Councillor Reeves put forward to have the silos painted. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Hunt. So we've got a motion proposed by Councillor Reeves and seconded by Councillor Hunt to approve the application in line with officer's recommendations with the added conditions for the applicant to paint the silos green. We've then got next speakers will be Councillor Hill, Councillor Reeves and Councillor Bra, and then we'll bring in the officers if there's anything they would like to add.
I'll just be brief. I was going to second the motion, but Councillor Hunt's beaten me to it, so I won't say any more.
Thank you, Councillor Hill. Councillor Reeves.
Yeah, I think it's a good point about the biodiversity as well. I understand what has been raised about the concern with hedgerows. When looking at the plan, I don't see that these polytunnels are located anywhere near any of the already existing hedgerows that are there. In fact, if anything, they are actually going to, within the plan, commit to new planting around the polytunnels as well, and that could, would actually increase biodiversity. And if they continue to do this, I think that that will only add to the use of the land. So just wanted to make that extra point to add to reasons why.
Thank you, Councillor Reeves. The next speaker I've got is Councillor Bra.
Thank you, Chair. Right, if obviously the panel is minded to approve the application, I would like a couple of other conditions to put forward. One is if ever turkey farm's no longer there, the land should be put back to arable land, not used for any other development. Obviously to prevent merging with Maidenhead, which is obviously there's not much gap between that part of the land and Maidenhead. To protect our water supply and protect a very important part of our green belt from a further unwanted development, to reduce the visual impact of unsightly industrial equipment to a minimum. So I would like those conditions to put in before we go to vote.
Thank you, Councillor Bra. I'll bring in Alison just to talk through those conditions proposed by Councillor Bra before then we can bring in Councillor Reeves. Alison.
Yeah, apologies. I'm not entirely sure exactly what conditions you were looking at. In terms of the land returning, I think I just mentioned that previously. I don't think that such a condition would meet the relevant tests. We are looking at adding a condition relating to painting the silos green, as included in the motion. And there are a number of conditions recommended which would relate to controlling the pollutants in the groundwater.
The other question I'd like to ask, why this application took 2 years to come to panel?
Alison, do you want to talk about it briefly?
There was an initial delay in terms of getting the comments from the Environment Agency. They are under increasing backlog of applications, so we had to wait for those. And then there was a screening opinion that needed to take place and additional reports and documents in order to address concerns by residents. So we needed to make sure we were in a position where we could make a recommendation on the submission.
I'm sure the planning authority could ask the EA for urgent.
I wish that was the case. I honestly do.
2 years is a long time to get. First of all, they were against the SPZs, but now they seem to be for it. So that's sort of news to me. Secondly, why this was allowed for 2 years without planning permission?
There's nothing, I mean, an application was submitted to regularise the works, and that's the, we were going through the process of considering that.
Only when the enforcement officer was told the applicant he has to apply for a planning permission to have the turkey sheds there, not before.
Thank you, Councillor Bra. We're going to move to Councillor Reeves next, as the next speaker, please.
Thank you very much. I have to take into consideration the requests of fellow councillors to update my proposal in regard to, as far as I can see, there are the one thing that I think is remaining as a condition to consider is the return of arable land. I'm in agreement with the planning officer. I won't be changing it and adding that condition to the proposal. I feel that it is agricultural land already, and therefore there is no reason to actually specifically state what that agricultural use is. That's not within my purview or my remit to do so. And I won't be adding that to my proposal as a condition. I think what they're doing there isn't connecting the Cookham to Maidenhead. If anything, it's actually helping us to defend the openness of the land to avoid any development on that particular land. So by maintaining agricultural use and economically viable agricultural use, I think is a good thing. So that's my
thank you,
word on
Councillor
that.
Reeves. I don't want to get into a back and forth, but very briefly, Councillor Bra, and then if there's no one else to speak, we'll take it to the
Chair,
votes.
I didn't mean if it's agricultural land, I'm happy, but my point was development houses. That was
So
my
in
point.
terms of, I wonder then if it might confirm and satisfy your point then, just to confirm to Alison, or confirm via Alison then, that this is, that the approval of this application will not change its greenbelt status and will not change its continuation as arable land, which therefore prevents greenbelt development of properties.
The lawful use of the land is agricultural, and there's no change of use within this application. And there's no the stopping of this current use would not then open the gates for anything else. They would still need planning permission.
Can we
for anything.
put that as a condition?
It's not necessary because they would require planning permission in itself.
Thank you, Alison. We've got no other registered speakers on this item, as no one else has raised their intention to speak. So we've got one motion on the table proposed by Councillor Reeves and seconded by Councillor Hunt to approve the application in line with the officer's recommendations with the added condition for the silos to be painted green. Will, would you like to take us through the vote?
So the motion on the table is grant apologies. So the motion on the table is to grant planning permission for the turkey farm. Councillors, they can either vote against, vote for, or abstain. So voting for the motion, Councillor Martin. Councillor Hunt. Councillor Bra.
Against.
Councillor Hill. Councillor Reeves. For. Councillor Singh. For. And Councillor Reynolds. For. So the results are 6 in favour, 1 against, and so the motion carries.
Thank you, Will, and thank you everybody for that item. Moving on then to the next item on the agenda, which is agenda item number 6, which is the later living apartments. Jeffrey, would you like to take us through that one?
And associated communal facilities on land between Gringer Hill and Hargrave Road in Maidenhead, including associated parking, vehicular pedestrian access from Gringer Hill, maintenance, emergency pedestrian access from Hargrave Road, and all associated landscaping, including the removal of the existing vegetation and tennis court. From the slide, you see the red line boundary is the site. The application site measure approximately 0.57 hectares and is located between Gringer Hill and Hargrave Road. The site is within an identified protected employment site as a mixed-use area under policy ED2 of the Borough Local Plan, which is known as the DTZ research site. Currently, the site comprises an unused tennis court and a grassland, which are not open to the public, and is associated with the adjacent office complex. The site itself does not have a formal access currently, and it has to be accessed through the land to the south, associated with the existing office building. From the slide, you see that's the views from the east on the side, the west, the south, and the north the side. Next slide, please. Thanks, Alison. So as in my introduction, the application seeks plan permission for 49 units C3 shelter housing in the form of 26 one-bedroom unit and 23 two-bedroom unit. 2 guest suites are proposed on the ground floor and third floor respectively. The occupation of the proposed unit will be restricted to those at age over 60 within the use class C3, which will be secured by conditions. Commune facilities will be proposed for future occupants, including the lounge, club room, commune amenity space. I would like to remind members, the application site is subject to an extant planning permission, which was being approved by this committee last year for the development of 44, the same C3 shelter housing unit with associated facilities. With a section 106 planning obligation to secure a review mechanism for affordable housing provision, carbon offset contribution, and the travel plan. Under the extant 44 unit scheme, the unit was 11 one-bed and 33 two-bed. The current application will provide a slightly different mix, which with a 26 one-bed and 23 two-bed. Other key changes include the overall buildings will be reduced by approximately 150 square meters of gross internal area, and that reduction area will be provide additional hard and soft landscaping area in the parking area, which is in the entrance of the site, and also to the south-facing courtyard area for the future occupants. The changes also include reducing the size of balconies at the eastern elevations. There's 2 bay windows adding to the second floor unit facing Hargrave Road, and also adding a new guest suite and owner's lounge kitchen area. Next slide, please. So, the slideshow is the standard floor plans for the building itself. And next slide, please. And that's the elevations of the buildings. The proposed building blocks facing the Hargrave Road will be 3-story, and the block facing Gringer Hill will be 4 stories. The proposal comprises a new vehicular access to Gringer Hill and a new pedestrian gauge secondary access to Hargrave Road. But please note that Hargrave Road access would be just used for emergency maintenance only. In terms of parking arrangement, the proposal is seeking to provide 32 parking spaces, and also electrical vehicle charging facility will also be provided. The proposal also includes parking spaces and also cycle parking spaces, and they all will be secured by planning conditions. In terms of the technical matters of the application, the proposed development will achieve 10.11 net gain in biodiversity compared to the existing extant scheme 8.23. There's a significant improvement, and that 10.11 is also above the mandatory national biodiversity net gain requirement, which will come into enforce in November 2023. The proposed development can also achieve an overall 69 reduction in carbon dioxide emissions, which is also an improvement from the extant scheme, which is a 50% based on the information provided. The remaining will be secured by the carbon offset contribution, which will be secured by section 106. The legal agreement will also secure the submission of a travel plan. I would like to draw members, there was an update sheet of these applications. The applicant respond to the council independent assessor regarding on the alternative use value. And the alternative use, the key point I would like to note members was, the alternative use value test is to just make sure that the scheme to be used for working out that AUV should be policy compliance. And there is also other update from the applicant regarding on the responding to the council highways comments. but there's no change to the overall officer recommendations. There is also another update sheet on an update sheet. The council received the applicant's offer yesterday, and with a 250,000 offsite contribution to be made, subject to the removal of the recommended stage, early stage and late stage review mechanism recommended by the council by the assessors. The offered was roughly potentially fund a 2.3 rented unit and 5 intermediate units, which was being and after the council sought the advice from the council independent assessors. The council and then sought an improved offer from the applicant, and the applicant now can offering a £367,500 as a contribution, roughly equivalent to 7,500 per dwelling. And based on the improved offer and the certainty of it, rather than the uncertainty about the early and late stage review, the officers is happy to recommend the committee this evening to accept that financial sum to provide affordable housing. In summary, the proposed development complies with the relevant development plan, and in terms of highways, trees, landscaping, ecological biodiversity, environment, health, flood rates and drainage, subject to recommended conditions and planning obligations. So the officers is to recommend approve, subject to the matters set out in the report. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Jeffrey. Before I open up to Councillor Reeves and Councillor Hill, just bring Gillian in very quickly.
Thank you, Chairman. I think before members start their debates and considerations of this item, it is very important to consider that there is an outstanding permission on this site, subject to conditions in a 106, and that is a material planning consideration, and that it is important that the council act as a consistent decision maker. So that's a sort of just to make that comment. In addition, Jeffrey has set out that the proposal, there's a change to the recommendation to delete bullet 3 from the section 106 heads of terms on page 70 of the report, and that would be replaced with a head of term to secure the £367,500 to provide off-site affordable housing. So that's a change to the recommendation. Thank you, Chairman.
Thank you, Gillian. Got 2 speakers currently on this. We'll first open to Councillor Reeves.
Thank you very much. First of all, I just want to actually commend the officer on actually being creative in thinking about securing funds to actually support the council's drive for affordable housing, and to actually put forward this change around the actually challenging the initial offer of 250,000. I think that's quite brave to do that, and I'm glad that they have actually taken a position to not just accept what developers are offering initially, but to actually question whether they should be paying more, and in doing so has secured almost a 50% greater contribution towards our fund for affordable housing, which I think is a good thing. The early and late stage review could obviously net us risk in potentially even receiving a lower amount to that. So I think that's nothing but a good thing. Also, I noted in previously that there's actually been a increase in carbon reduction. So from 50% up to 69% carbon reduction from the previous application that was actually granted. I think that's also a really good thing based on where this council is trying to aim for through net zero targets, and highly encourage that we actually try and seek doing so for all future applications as well. I think on top of that, the fact that we have the developer has increased the offering and taken into account what potential future residents actually need and the change in the environment, and in doing so has reduced the size and also increased the landscaping opportunity around the site, shows, I think, what I would say is a model of developer approach to what I think is more considered developments. And I think that is something that I think should be encouraged more for developers to find ways to increase their capacity whilst reducing the size and increasing the landscaping and other green credentials of their developments. So on that basis, I would feel that we should be actually going forward with granting the application on that basis. And that is a proposal, Councillor Reynolds.
Thank you, Councillor Reeves. Councillor Hill is the next speaker.
Thank you very much, Chairman. I think Councillor Reeves has covered some of the points that I was going to cover, particularly around the design and the landscaping and the effort that the developer has made. I'm delighted to see a significant contribution to social housing, so I think that's excellent. I won't go on at length, but the thing that I'm most pleased with is this makes a very significant contribution to the later living requirement in the borough. It's sort of worrying that it's for the over 60s, being over 60 myself, but I won't be moving in. In all seriousness, we do mercifully have an ageing population, and to be honest, a healthy ageing population, which is a good thing, and this development is very welcome. So this time I managed to get my speech in before Maureen or anybody else, and I get to second the motion for approval behind Councillor Reeves. I'll beat you to it one day. Thank you very much, Chairman.
Thank you, Councillor Hill. And I'm sure, as an over 60 Councillor Hill, I'm sure if it is built, the developers will be very kindly show you around and show you some of the amenities on offer that you may wish to enjoy. Councillor Singh.
Thank you, Chair. I'd like to associate myself with the motion by Councillor Reeves. This time I was going to second it until I got beaten by Councillor Hill. I'd like to thank the officers for the work they've done and managed to secure almost 50% more Section 106 funding for our social housing, which going forward, if we can achieve that or anywhere near that, that will be absolutely fantastic considering what our finances are. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Singh. Councillor Martin, followed by Councillor Bra.
Councillor Hill, you'll beat me to it as well on seconding this. Yeah, just to really echo what Councillor Reeves was saying, you know, it's great to see that this is in Belmont, my ward, that ecology and biodiversity has been very considered on this development, and I see it's much improved on the previous approved development already. So yeah, that was all I just wanted to add, really.
Thank you.
We should see more of that.
Thank you, Councillor Martin. Councillor Bra.
Yes, obviously, everybody knows that this application was approved last year, and thank you for the excellent report. Yeah.
Thank you, Councillor Bra. I think it is fantastic work by the officer team to be able to secure the off-site affordable housing contributions and the financial off-site affordable housing contributions. So my thanks to all of the planning team that were able to make that happen. We have got a motion on the table by Councillor Reeves, seconded by Councillor Hill, to go for the officer's recommendation to grant planning permission, subject to the items listed in recommendation 1 after 1.6 of the report, with that change to bullet point 3 to include the financial contribution instead. So Will, would you like to take us to the votes?
So the motion on the table, proposed by Councillor Reeves, seconded by Hill, is to approve the planning application. Councillors, they can either vote to approve, abstain or against. So to approve the motion, Councillor Martin.
For.
Councillor Hunt.
For.
Councillor Bra.
For.
Councillor Hill.
For.
Councillor Reeves.
For.
Councillor Singh. For. And Councillor Reynolds. For. All right. So that is seven approvals. So 7 yeses, and the motion carries.
Thank you, Will. The only other item on the agenda then is agenda item 7, which is appeals and appeal decision reports for the committee to note. Any members of the committee would like to raise any thoughts on those? Happy to note them then? Fantastic, thank you very much. All that then leads me to do thank you to Helena Allison, Gillian, Will,